Hi, and welcome back to Hostmatic. My name is Matt, and the goal of this channel is to help you market your vacation rental or short-term rental through analytics and data, and not just talk about the fluff. We're here to talk about real data, real things that can help you. So we're talking today, as the title said, about do upsells increase revenue? So I want to explain why it's complicated and what data we can extract. And for this, I'm using the Hostfully Vacation Rental 2021 industry report. So in case you're following along, on page 12, I'm going to start with the planning growth for 2022. So if we look at the growth strategies, that is what people plan to use to grow in 2022. And this is based on the outlooks from 2021, or just in general. We've got upsells here, and we can see that it's sort of a higher priority than it was in previous years. And I think that's just the natural growth, the evolution of somebody's business. And also, I think it's a way to increase revenue, as we've lost some revenue because of the pandemic. Of course, things are picking up. But what we can see here also is that a lot of these partnerships that people had with third parties and a lot of the upsells went away during COVID because they weren't simply allowed to be opened or there was no availability. So that's something that people want to focus on a little bit more. So 65% of the respondents offer products or services or perks as upsells to guests. And on average, it's 3.2 upsell types that are offered to their guests. And the most popular ones remain early check-in, late checkout, and mid-stay cleaning services. So this is obviously like due to the pandemic, people are more hyper-focused on having cleanliness and, just certain delays that are involving traveling and, delays at the airports, or a lot of it's COVID measures and COVID restrictions, which has caused a lot of delays and inconvenience. So this is reflective of what happened in 2021. However, this tends to be something, if you think about when you book stays or when you go to hotels even, having that late checkout and early check-in is often a case. I mean, it's well known, if you show up early for whatever the reason is, you don't want to be standing outside with your luggage with nowhere to go. And because of flight delays and stuff, sometimes there's a case to be made for late checkout. So a lot of people want that irregardless of COVID, but it's become sort of a paramount feature to offer amidst the complications of the COVID scenario. So having that flexibility has been really key for customer guest satisfaction. And in fact, in a lot of these cases, it would have a direct impact on guest feedback and ultimately the ratings. And we are beholden to the guest ratings, of course. So I've heard some bigger operators speak even as recent as today on the Breezeway webinar, that they're offering these services for free, as in they're not actually using them to upsell because they want to provide that next level of guest satisfaction service. Some people can do that, some people can't. I mean, if you have that sort of flexibility, that may be something that would give you more of an edge, or at least ensure that you get the customer retention and better reviews. But that is a lot. I mean, when you're dealing with cleaners and that type of thing, it's not necessarily that easy. I mean, if you've got in-house cleaners, you can simply delay them an hour or get them to clean an hour ahead. But when you're scheduling people, it's not always that difficult. So, of course, if you're providing cleaning services on a case-by-case basis, and you have to pay your cleaner to come out, that's when you're going to need to have those upsells, at least if possible, because cleaners are very hard to get right now, and that's a whole nother thing. But if you can do it, put it in as a upsell, because guests are obviously wanting that here. So if you look at this chart here, what we can really see from the data is that the offerings through PMS are less than offered outside of the PMS. And there's a couple of reasons for this. When we have to look at the data, we have to understand what's really going on here. And the respondents aren't broken up here by size of operations. So the fact that less people offer these upsell services through the PMS could be just simply for the fact that they don't have a PMS. And also they don't have a way to charge through their PMS, where some of them will give you the ability to include upsells at checkout, some of them don't. And so for the early check-in, extended checkout, this might be something that they're offering, but outside of the PMS. And we can see that's the majority of people here. So that's something that the guest has to request. Perhaps you've sent a follow-up email or text or some sort of off-platform communication offering the service where guests can communicate with you and ask for those services. Likewise, local tours and activities come in third after those, and grocery pre-arrival, spa massage, other concierge, personal chef, and ground transportation. I'm surprised to see there are quite a number of people offering things like chefs through the PMS. I would assume that those are higher end luxury type of destinations. I have read some articles where you have habitual short-term rental users, and they have talked about things like having food at the location beforehand when they arrive. And logistically, that could be complicated, but if you have a way to do that, there's some things that you could be looking at. The tours and activities are still being offered, but obviously there was a huge blowback because of the pandemic, and a lot of those tours and activities weren't offered because they just simply weren't open and available. And even if you have a PMP or a platform that offers upsells, this data could also indicate that one of the reasons people may not be offering this is logistical reasons. So if you have a very high-end restaurant, perhaps it's not easy to sell, a restaurant package and get that booked ahead of time because of the availability. So it might be something that they don't want to sell you up front and then deal with returns and things like that. Perhaps you wanted to go on a boat tour, but the operator was open one week and not open the next week. So sometimes it was better to just remove those upsells from checkout and leave that sort of after or just off the table altogether. So if we look at how managers are capitalizing on the upsells, we can see here a link between technology use and upselling. So on average, the hosts and managers with 6+ technology tools in their business offered 5 different types of upsells. And if you're a small operator and just using Airbnb, you're not going to be able to necessarily offer those upsells through the platform because you might be able to add on cleaning services and such to Airbnb, but you don't have the option to add some sort of a package on there. So it would make sense that people with more flexible technology would be able to offer those. Also, facilitating upsells, people that use payment processors, generally speaking, we can see that they offer at least one more upsell compared to non-user counterparts. Now, that's not a huge insight, only one more upsell, but the benefit here is obviously that even though it's a lot easier to get someone to upsell at the point of sale, i.e. checkout, you don't necessarily have the ability to charge them afterwards, especially if you only use something like Airbnb, whereas operators that have their own payment solutions can at any time receive a call from the guest and say, hey, I'm interested in the package I saw, or they can do it directly from the website or send some sort of communication while the guest is staying that would allow them to, or maybe it's a link in the guidebook, maybe it's in the welcome email, and so on. So having that ability to sort of run the card, and you can do that through very easily to set up. The gatekeeping isn't what it used to be. You can get Stripe, you can get Square payment system as well, and you could do that. And of course, the larger companies pursue more upsell opportunities, and that's to be expected. Now, there's a number of reasons for this. Obviously, they may have the staff and the coordination to do it, where if you're a smaller operator, you're focused on other tasks within the business, so you don't have that ability to. And the larger operators either are making up revenue, they have more time to dedicate, as I mentioned, or it's integrated with their automation platform in some cases. Now, do upsells have an impact on income? Is what we really want to know. And the answer here is why it's complicated, because those in the neutral ground, there's obviously no change for people that took a loss of 20% or more. I assume they had a lot bigger issues to deal with than upsells if you're losing 20% or more, which is unfortunate, obviously. So neutral, -10 to +10 on revenue, saw basically, the higher stat here is no upsells offered, but the key data that's really missing here for us to make any type of conclusion with is who's the -10, who's the +10. And I wish they would have broken that up so we could see maybe the people with no upsells were more towards the -10 and the people with upsells are more towards the +10. That would have given us a pretty clear indication of whether or not they were working for these operators and attributing to the income growth. So all we have to go off of is the gain of 20% or more. But as the research will state, and we can conclude, is that we can attribute this growth to the upsells specifically. Now, these might be just really good operators that turn things around. Maybe they increased their holdings and they had more properties available in the market. Any number of things could have really attributed, but the people who are offering the upsells have seen growth. Whether or not, again, that's because of the upsells, we don't know. But we can see that there's a 9% difference between the people that didn't offer upsells. So my conclusion is there was some sort of upselling there that attributed to that 9%. And I think it's worth taking a look at, and it's worth diving into. And I'm going to do another video of how we can organize upsells and work with those upsells. But some key takeaways here is, again, it's easier to put those upsells at the point of checkout. So if you have cleaning services or something you can include, on Airbnb, that would be more in-house type of stuff. If you have packages and you are on an Airbnb VRBO, that doesn't put you out of the game. It's one more case for you to have a direct booking site, which we all know is important, but it's a lot of time and maybe you're not there yet. But you don't necessarily have to have the direct booking site. But what you can do is, if you can collect email addresses and send welcome emails from people who book on Airbnb, you can send people perhaps not only your guidebook with links inside there, but you can also send them your website, which has upsell packages on it, and then for booking purposes, a link back to your Airbnb, for example, if you don't have, a PMP with booking capabilities on your website. Another easy thing to do if you don't want to go down the website route and sort of start building that up and eventually get to your direct bookings, obviously, you can simply use the same methods to send them to your Facebook page, for example, and put some sort of information on upsells there. Now, the reason that I think a lot of people have been wanting to upsell but haven't pulled the trigger on it, because logistically it's quite hard, especially in pandemic. We already covered why that's hard. You know why it's hard. But what we can't discount is thinking about ways that we can work with upsells. For example, if you have a guidebook, that's sort of the entry point into it. And for the better guest experience, we would have a guidebook, and you should have one showing what's in the area and what the attractions are. And a lot of people had those printed out and left at the property. Now a lot of people have shifted to digital because of COVID and ease of use. But the guidebook, maybe, if you have the best pizza in town is at this restaurant, that would be something in the guidebook, but you can't necessarily work that into an upsell or a package. But if you have a restaurant where they take bookings and they have more infrastructure where you could come up with ways to work with them, then go that route. So you may have a romantic package, which includes a trip to a vineyard, and you have a 4-course dinner. I would work with the restaurants, try to come up with a way that you can implement a coupon code, at least from your site, into these booking decks. I mean, if it's a vineyard and people need to check out themselves, work a coupon code out with the vineyard so you can get attributed and get a kickback, for example. Again, as a pizza place, they're not going to give you a kickback. Maybe there's no margin. They don't have any way to track what traffic you sent to them. So you want to look at places that have sort of online booking, or a way to curate a restaurant would be to throw in a 3 course or 4 course predefined meal. And I would concierge that service. The larger operators, you can do this a lot better yourself because you have the staffing and the capabilities. If you're a smaller operator, I would curate it, but with not having the load on my shoulders in terms of dealing with, refunds and coordination. I would automate that stuff, but maybe go talk to the restaurant, get a 4 course meal put together that's maybe specific for you, put that up as a package, and then when a customer checks out and buys that, whether it's at point of checkout, or if you're on the Airbnb platform and stuff, you sell them after. You can call the restaurant and make that reservation, or simply go online and do that, work with the person there, and then they'll have it attributed to you. Now, a final point I want to make is, with certain things like cleaning, if you can get those extended cleanings done, you may work out a better relationship with your cleaner. If you're bringing them more business more often, you may get to a point where these mid-stay cleanings, for example, help you build a better relationship with the cleaner, so you might get better pricing, or maybe you get to the point where you just are able to take them on full time and alleviate one of the biggest concerns right now, which is getting cleaning staff, and at a reasonable price as well. So upsells do have the potential of working. They can work, and I would definitely try it out and see if you can get anywhere around this 9% increase in revenue overall. I would spend a little bit of time on that if you can, and I would spend time automating. I just really wanted to focus on the actual data points of how well this is working for other people. And again, this survey is done annually, and there was 165 respondents across all different sizes and vertical markets, and the majority of respondents in US, UK. But there's definitely room to grow here, room to automate and figure this out a little bit better, especially if you're a software or service provider. And getting this down right as a host, I think, will really help revenue moving forward. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Obviously, if you're new here, I would love a subscribe. New, just getting started, and I'll definitely get better as I go. So I would love some comments and feedback to help me just rein in this format and see how I could better serve the community. I'll leave the link to our blog below. It's all about short-term rental marketing. All right, take care.